G'day folks, Jason here on the Udder Farm. I'm actually on the Udder Farm property today, guys. The topic of discussion is going to be continual grazing, or otherwise known as conventional grazing, versus rotational grazing, otherwise known as managed grazing. Before I go on, guys, I'll give you my definition of the two. Continuous grazing or conventional grazing is where you have your farm and you just dump your cattle in and they go graze the property wherever they want to go, up and back, up and back, up and back on a daily basis, every day, up and back, going across the same areas. That is simplified version of conventional grazing. Rotational grazing is where you have taken control of that livestock's movement. So in my case, I have cells, so I use polybraid and O'Brien step-ins, and I control them to a specific area, and I move those cattle twice a day where I want them to move, not where they want to go. So it is definitely management grazed. So without further ado, guys, I'll start off by going through conventional grazing, and then once I've gone through the topic of conventional grazing and the effects it has on the land, I'll go and cover rotational grazing and the effects it has on the land also. I'll start by talking about this area here, guys. I specifically mowed it 3 months ago because there's several things I want to talk about in here when it comes to continual grazing. So the area I've slashed, guys, is probably 30 foot by about 100 foot. So it starts at the shed, comes down to there, and comes right across to here. So the pasture is relatively fresh in comparison to that there, which has all come to seed. So, and that's another topic I'll cover with continual grazing, guys. That's all seeded, as you can see. Loads of seeds through there, whereas here it's only sporadic. This is the problem with continual grazing, guys. If you have a look, see these areas here is virtually chewed to the ground. There wouldn't even be 2 or 3 inches of height in that grass. So it's overgrazing all the way through here. It's been overgrazed. There, all the way through this area here. So what's that telling me, guys, is because they continually graze up and back. I know they're a predictable animal, creature of habit. They actually start down there of a morning, come through, stop at the dam for a drink. They graze up through this area. They shelter under those trees at midday, head back down to the dam for a drink, and then of an afternoon they'll start from that tree and go all the way to the front of the property till dark. And that is routinely done every day on a daily basis. So with continual grazing, guys, what happens is, because this is fresh grass, because I slashed it, every time they come across this area, grass will recover, not recover, but it'll start coming back 4 days and it starts to get regrowth, fresh grass. And at that point, the cows just keep coming back and nailing it off. It does not fully recover. And what happens then, guys, as you can see, it takes the ground down to no height at all. And as you can see in there, that's bare dirt. There's no carbon on the ground. So what happens when the sun comes out, guys, is it actually dries that area off. So it's drying out all that moisture in the ground for your microbes, and that cannot stay on that surface, and your worms won't come through because the surface is hot. When it's continually grazed, the temperatures increases on your land, and the microbes and the worms can't do their job effectively. And because you can see, guys, there's no height to it, you can't lay any carbon on the ground because they continually graze up and back. There's only 1 cow, 2 cows walking through here. They're not herded up, they're not mobbed up, so they're not trampling carbon on the ground. They're actually eating the pasture right down to the ground level and not trampling anything, because they're sporadically spread from one end of your farm to the other. Generally they like to stay together in groups, but not a mob. They're spread maybe across 50 meters. So it's not herded, it's sort of, they sporadically walk across willy-nilly chewing grass. So you haven't got that pressure on the ground to lay that carbon down. So what you'll also notice, guys, in this area I've mowed for this demonstration, is right in front of the camera, you can see it's being continually grazed, so it's that high off the ground. And this area right next to me is seeded. So I keep harping on about when you pasture seeds, the cows won't touch it. They will touch it if they're desperate. Say winter time, they've already grazed it right down to the ground and they've got nothing left to eat, they will come back and eat it. and then they'll eat weeds, they'll eat whatever they can get their mouths around because they're hungry. But preferably they always go for that bit there now, because when they've grazed that, they've come through and eaten it, and then when it regrows, like I said, it's high in sugar, high in energy, it's sweeter, they will eat that. They've left this, they purposely walk around this because this is less palatable, because it's seeded and the energy is drained out of it. So that's the issue with continual grazing, guy, also is because there's such a mass area they got to cover. When you do get a dump of rain and you get a lot of heat like we do here in Queensland, Australia, the grass just booms, and they cannot cover the area big enough or fast enough to get control of the plant before it seeds. And then once it seeds, this happens. They leave it in a state where they don't come back to it. They just let it go. And that's when you've got to slash once a year, twice a year, to get those seed heads to try and get some regrowth, to get nice, fresh, palatable grass with higher sugar content. So with bandage grazing, guys, this wouldn't happen, because you're putting them in a certain area, Pacific area, high density, and it's a competition between all of them. You'll see them move through, they'll eat, one will go over, what do they eat? That must be good, and they'll compete, they'll eat everything down to the level which you want them to, which is specifically 2/3 of that plant, and it doesn't get a chance to come to seed. You move them through your property fast enough to come back, hopefully, before it's seeded. So you're controlling the seed heads by moving those cattle through and eating the tops of it off that plant from pension stage down into mid-teenage grass stage. I'll come back into a video on 3 stages of grass, guys, and where preferably you want to try and keep it. See, in this area here, guys, is worse. Because I haven't slashed it at all, check out the seed heads. They actually come through here, and if you have a look at the ground, there's areas in here which is right down to the ground they chewed. They'll sporadically come through now and keep that nailed off every 4 days. When that shoots back, it's chewed off. It grows back, it's chewed off. And they don't touch the seeded pasture, because, like I said, the energy is drained out. There's no goodness in it. There might be a bit of goodness, but nothing like when it's fresh, guys. They prefer, like in here, they've nailed all this area, kept it low. They come back every 3 or 4 days, chew it off, and just leave all that seeded pasture behind, which is a waste. As I mentioned, guys, they're totally predictable, creature of nature. As you'll see, they're behind me there under that shaded tree. On the other side of that wall is the dam. So mid-morning, they've come back, they've had their drink, and now they're resting before they go up to that other tree for lunchtime. And that's where they'll sit most of the day for a few hours in the heat of the sun and ruminate until it cools off. But what I want to talk about now, guys, you see here in front of me, that is down at the ground. It would not be an inch, and it's bare dirt as well, guys. So another thing about continual grazing is this property has probably got a phenomenal amount of native seed bank on the ground that's not being utilised. The why it can't be utilised, guys, is it's not getting enough water and it's drying out and the seeds can't germinate. You need to have pastoral height at 200-300 mil, so when it does rain, and carbon on the ground also helps, beneficial, massive, helps dramatically, it holds that moisture in, but then it gives a chance for that native seed bank to germinate. And that's where you get your diversity from, guys. You don't have to go, no-till drill or plough or seed, or if you've given it a few years and the grass height is high enough and you haven't got diversity, yeah, then go broadcast or no-till drill. But continual grazing, native grass won't get the opportunity to germinate. Now, I may have 3 or 4 different species here now that grow being continual grazed, but there could be another 6 or 7 or 8 native seed bank seeds that don't germinate because they haven't get the moisture they require because of the continual grazing process. They just cannot germinate. As soon as the sun comes out, it dries out, no moisture, it just doesn't germinate. This area in front of me here, guys, would have to be the worst area on the property that I've got. As you can see, there's no grass on the ground, and if I look down closely, you can see the dirt. That dirt is rock hard. I mean, rock hard. I'm flat out breaking it. When I do break it, it's dust, and if you look closely, there's cracks in the surface. It's that dry that all the moisture comes out and it's cracking. So this is the worst area on the property, and the reason it's bad, guys, is because continual grazing, the animals are coming back and forth and eating all this grass. It's not recovering, and they're eating it down to the ground. The sun's drying it out, and because every day they come back and forth, routinely, so predictable, they walk across the same area and cause compaction. And we all know what happens when we get compaction, guys. The water cannot penetrate into the ground, and then you end up with surface water runoff. And there's only one result at the end of surface water runoff, and that is erosion. I'm standing right in the middle of the worst area of my property. This used to be 3 meters high, and it'd have to be at least 12 foot across by 30 foot long. Like I said, I meant 9 foot deep. We put 24 bales of hay in here. It's compressed down, and it's done its job. As you can see, guys, it's still eroding away, but the soil is being captured now in the hay. It doesn't run straight through down into the creek. And that's the worst effect of continual grazing, guys, you can get. Because now I'm not only have I got the ground hard, and in winter time there's not much grass to eat. It's either come to seed or they've overgrazed it and there's nothing left to bring that grass through, is erosion. Now I'm losing ground, potentially pastoral ground that could have pasture across it, is now washing off my property and leaving big voids like this. And that's what continual grazing, conventional grazing does, guys. If you're on a flat surface, not undulating, you're probably lucky, but on my property it's undulating in certain areas, and this is the effect, because the water runs off the ground because there's no grass, there's no compaction, there's no armor, and then it builds up speed, velocity, and then it comes to a point where a little bit of a drop off, and then it starts eroding out, and then it forms into gully erosion like we've got here. Gone through the 3 stages, and then it forms mass gully erosion on undulating property. So you get away with it if you're on flat ground, but in these circumstances I haven't. Continual grazing also has the ill effect on the health of the animal as well, because you're making them go across the ground on a daily basis, year in, year out, across the same area, and they're defecating in these areas, guys. So you've got the flies in there. Eventually the fly larvae hatches, and then there's copious amounts of flies, and they're walking past that on a daily basis all year round. The flies are there, so they're hatching on a daily basis. And the amount of flies that, that are being produced, and that's why the fly numbers get up and up and up, and you're treating them, because they're going across the ground that they've defecated on all day, every day, 365 of the year. Also, then you've got your issue with worms, because you're continually making them eat right down at ground level. And there's multitude of different types of worms, guys. You don't get that when you're doing cell grazing or managed grazing, because your head is out of the ground. So they're not getting the issue with worms. They don't need to worm. And also, I'll move mine twice a day. So you're moving them away, 3 or 4 days time, in the same area where those larvae hatching. They're well and truly miles, not miles, but they're, 3 or 4 days worth of movements in front of that fly larva. Yeah, you're going to get flies, but not like the number you've got if they're coming across every day and they're hatching, every day on a daily basis, and they're eating, walking on by where the larvae is hatching. And there's only one treatment for that, guys, and that's when you got to use your pour-ons, your drenches, and your sprays. And once you start introducing those to your animals, all those chemicals go inside, and then they either excrete it out through the urine or their dung. Now all of a sudden you've got a toxic turd or dung on the ground, and the microbes won't touch it, the worms won't touch it, they know it's toxic. Then all of a sudden you're decreasing the efficiency of your microbes and your worms, because they won't touch it because it's toxic. So you're reducing their numbers, and then it is going to end up sitting there going hard, rock hard, and it won't break down. So you can't utilize that dung fertilizer, butt fertilizer, because it sits there and goes hard in a paddy and it cannot break down. And if you've got to, I used to do it, guys, drag harrow across the paddocks, continual graze, it was low, every year, go across, smash that dung up, thinking, you beauty, I'm fertilising the ground, and when it rains, I'm going to have these nice green spots, high nitrogen, you beauty, things great, couldn't get any better, I've made it. It's far from the truth, guys. If you're harrowing the ground to get rid of the turds, you've really got to have a look why they're not breaking down themselves. It's either one, the poisons you put on the animal, or two, continual grazing, your grass is that short that the sunlight is drying that ground out, and the microbes and the worms won't come up because of the ground temperature. It's going to burn them, guys. There's no protection, so they're not going to come up to that turd and break it down because the ground is too hot. So let's move on to managed grazing, guys, or rotational grazing. I've got mine in a cell, so you can see here I've got my polybraid and my O'Brien step-ins. They're defining the zone which I'm keeping the animals. So I'm allowing them to graze specific areas, and I can move them at will rather than across the whole paddock. And as you can see here, guys, I have a look at the pasture I'm leaving compared with that when I'm continual grazing. So as you can see, this here area, guys, is probably, I know, about 4 inches, 100 mil. So generally I like to keep it anywhere between 6 inches to 8 inches. Here's an area here, guys, that's more like, that'd have to be 8 inches, 9 inches high. It's generally even all the way through, most time around that 8-inch mark. The only areas you get when you're cell grazing, when it's lower than that, is areas here, guys. As you can see, there's clover. And as I said, they prefer to go for the candy first. So this is an area of clover, and that wouldn't be, it'd have to be 2 inches high. And areas where the clover has been, it's exposed the dirt, but you can't help that, guys. That can't be helped. They're going to always go for that candy first. There are areas in this paddock which has seeded. I knew that. If you watch a couple of videos back, I've now sent my normal girls out to the bull to be serviced, and they aren't back, probably 50, 60 days. I want to know 2 cycles. So also, when you've got a lot of cattle in here, which I normally have, I have 5 to an area this big, you get a lot of armour put down. Unlike when you're continual grazing, guys, when you've got no armour at all, because there's no height to trample carbon down. It's all eaten off at that diaper stage and doesn't get a chance to armour down. This is a good area here, guys, with armour lying down. The Galloways have been through here and had their chew, but have a look at the armour, guys. It's on the ground. That's all laid down flat. All that laid down and broken that sap cycle off the end, so that's going to die. And if you dig through here, we'll have a look underneath. See, there's some brown area from last time I had the girls through. Even dig further, part that ground, and that was from previous, and then go even further again, and that's all soft soil, guys. That's from 2 years ago. That has turned into soil already, guys. So that's soft soil. It's not compact because it's freshly made, and it's like a sponge, guys. If you have a close look, we've just had a rain come over now. Look, that's a sponge. It's holding that water in. Compared to the area we were out there when we continued grazing on the other farm, you would have seen that area I showed you. It was just dirt and dust, and the area was cracking. We only recently had rain, and that was dry already. Because it's been overgrazed, the water is drying out. As soon as that sun comes out, guys, there's no armour on the soil. There's no height in the pasture to hold that water in. The sun is just drying it out. This is going to hold here for months. I can guarantee it, this property will be a lot greener than the neighbouring property who mow theirs regularly. And even at the back there, guys, they got horses in there. They slash their property down. I like to tromper my grass down, break that sap cycle. It holds the moisture in. If you haven't got access to the cattle, slashing is good, but just leave that armour on the ground and spread it out, because that'll hold moisture in too and break down into topsoil. So as you can see, guys, it's a very stark comparison. Continuous grazing versus rotational grazing or managed grazing. As you can see, the sun would find it very difficult to penetrate through this grass. It would also have to penetrate that amount of armour on the ground too. But not only that armour, there's 2 years worth of armour decaying under there. It's also got sun's got to also penetrate through that as well. Let's talk about surface runoff now, guys. When I first bought this property, I continually grazed it. Every time it rained, that's a neighbouring paddock, it's been continually grazed by horses. When it rained, the dirt would run down here all the way through my property. I've got drains here, and also up there from that property, continual graze, it'd run down and there'd be dirty water running through my drain across the road and out that side. But I'll give you a look. Since I've started cell grazing or management grazing with the cattle, I determine where they go, and I've got that much armour put down now. When it rains, copious amounts of rain I'm talking about, it stays on this property and it soaks in. But when it's really heavy torrential rain, the water starts on their property because they've got no armour on the soil, runs through the dirt deposits just after my fence line. So I'm now have got their soil building up on my property. And also up there, guys, a channel of water pours down here. It comes in with a metre of the fence, their dirt, and then stops on my property. So I'm now taking advantage of their soil building up on my property. And if you have a look here now, this used to be running dirty water. If you have a look now, guys, the water that is running off, that's clear water. When it used to run through, guys, before, when I was continual grazing, that used to be dirty water. It used to spew all the way through over here, across the bridge, and run out the other side, and be brown. Now it's actual crystal clear, guys. We get fish in there at some stage, guppies. We can see them swimming around. Now that is running down there, and that is also hydrating that channel of mine. That used to be really, really thin because being continual grazed, and now it sits in there longer and it hydrates the ground back from it. This pasture that'd be 2 foot high, guys, and like I said, it's taken between 28 to 40 days recovery now, guys. It's amazing. So, guys, the reason that's so clear is because I've got 2 years worth of soil now decomposed at the start of my fence line. It would have to be, 10, 15 mil thick of soft topsoil. It acts like a sponge, guys. The water goes through and holds there. Not like the other farm where it's hard and compact and the soil's dry out. It's like rock. It's been continually grazed. The cows keep walking on it a daily basis, compacting it. There's nothing there to lay over. It's constantly compact, short, dried out. Here, guys, like I said, they've got that topsoil now that's converted from 2 years ago. It's holding the water, but not only that. I've been through there recently a few times in the last, 3 or 4 months. It's that fresh armour as well that's had that sap cycle broken that is also on the ground. And that's acting as a filter, guys. When it goes through to the ground, water will hold in the soil. When it gets saturated, then it comes up through the soil level and starts running across the ground. But you got to remember, guys, the neighbouring topsoil coming on my property now has to go through a strainer of broken grass thatch which is lying on the ground. So that's holding back the dirt at that end and building my topsoil levels up, which is bonus. And I'm getting free soil from nothing from the neighbouring properties. By the time it reaches here, guys, it's got to go through 20, 25 metres, roughly 75 foot of soft soil and thatch, which is acting as a strainer. And this is why this is so clear, guys. So like I said, guys, continual grazing will end up turning your ground into cement. It dries out, it's hard, and you'll get runoff like this. I might as well be on the other farm property now, guys, because this is what that area of erosion looks like when it really gets torrential rain. It just runs down that hill, grabbing velocity as it goes, pulling the soil with it, and then runs over the edge. I showed you all that soil in the bottom of that erosion hole, guys. And without a word of a lie, guys, this is exactly what it's like. There's a video coming up in a couple of weeks' time. I'll show you. I went out there once we put that grass in there, that mulch hay, and it had torrential rain, and it absolutely teemed through. So, guys, if you love waterfalls, continual graze, guys, because you'll have all the waterfalls you want if you've got undulating property. You'll love it. It's right up your alley. But for me, as a cattle farmer and a livestock grazer, I don't want erosion. I want my livestock to be eating pasture, so I need to stop that. Continual grazing has that effect, guys. Rotational management grazing is where it's at. Regenerative farming, laying that carbon down, building back topsoil, having that armour on the soil will stop this on your farm. And when it comes to plant diversity, guys, this would have been gone because it wasn't the monoculture I had on the property. You know, this is lacking diversity. It's got about 5 or 6 varieties now of plants that the cows will eat. Like I said, some weeds, some 2 types of pasture. But the guy before me ploughed this, seeded it, and it was a dairy property. That's why it's a monoculture and not native seed bank. So, you know, for me to get diversity on here, I've had to wait a long time to build up the water. So any native seed that was here from previously, before it was pastured for dairy cattle, has now come through. And like I said, I've got 4 or 5. For me to add diversity now, all I have to do is roll out fodder of a different nature, like I did with that Rhodes grass on that bare area I had on the road on the bale video that you guys probably seen. If you haven't seen, jump on, have a look. But this here would have been poisoned. But now, just yesterday, this stem I snapped off. I welcome diversity, guys. When this seed was ready to drop, I broke that off and I went and threw that seed in numerous locations in the training paddy, hoping for the diversity to come through, because that has now given me a different root depth than the monoculture or the other plants or pasture I've got in the field already, compared to what's on the continuously grazed property at the other farm. It's got a few, you know, grasses. It's got, you know, a bit of bluegrass, it's got Rhodes grass, but that's it. Predominantly, it is all weeds. And a lot of them are not palatable weeds. The cows aren't touching them. When I get the sheep, they may touch him, or maybe goats. But because it hasn't got the armor on the ground, Mother Nature is trying to armor itself. She'll pop up what weeds it can, suitable for that soil, so that plant will survive that soil content or what it's lacking. So she's selective in what she's putting up. She won't put something up that's going to die. She wants something to stay there so she can cover herself. That's why if you've got your ground covered like I have on the trial property with pastures and don't overgraze them, Mother Nature will stop throwing up weeds for you. You'll smother them out, and she knows she's covered, and your pastoral grass will come through and swallow out the weeds. And Mother Nature was happy. She'll just go on to the next paddock next door, which is being continually grazed, and pop up more weeds across there and leave yours alone. So if you have a look in here, guys, this is areas which was grazed 16 days ago. And look at this new growth already coming through. You can see the armour they put on the ground by that brown residue. There's a bit of brown matter there. So that is all fresh regrowth in 16 days. There's more over here, guys, in the same area. It comes through over here. There. That was all grazed 16 days ago. Now that was probably taken down at a foot height. So it's about there. So that's already got about 3 to 4 inches of regrowth on it already. The girls at the moment are down there where the fence line are. So that wouldn't happen on the continual graze property or the other farm, guys. It just gets chewed down to the ground on a daily basis. The only time it would get any height to it is when it really torrentially rained in summer and the cows couldn't keep up with the growth. But that if it's that torrential, it generally happens and it all comes to seed. So they can't keep up with it, and then it seeds and then it loses the energy and you've lost it anyway. So you're not maximizing the growth you got because they're overgrazing. And if there does, like I said, if it does rain too much, torrential rain, and you get your good regrowth, it comes up that fast because you've had a lot of rain, a lot of heat. They can't keep up with it because they're being continually grazed, and you're not keeping them in one area to bite that down, move them through and control the seed heads. Guys, and right here is the very reason why I don't have to worm my animals. As you can see, the grass is left, that there is about 8 inches in height. You know, you're going to get areas down to ground where the clover is, but that can't be helped, guys. But generally it's between 4 inches to 8 inches in height. And then within that afternoon, like I said, I rotate mine through twice a day. So I'm moving them morning and moving them night. So they're not in the same area. They're not allowed to chew it down to the ground, and they're moving out. They trample the thatch down, and within 12 hours they're out. So the poo or the dungs haven't even got time for the flies to lay the larvae and definitely not hatch. They're being gone. They're like 3 or 4 days ahead before that even hatches. And that's why I don't have to worm my animals, guys, because they're not being grazed in the ground where predominantly most of your parasites are. And they're moving on before the flies have a chance to hatch. So you're not spraying them for flies, and you're not putting pour-ons or chemicals in the animals, injectables or drenching because of worms. They're gone. And this is the very reason why I don't need to waste money on chemicals for parasites, because there is none. They're not getting access to the parasites. Their head's out the ground and they're moving on. And when it comes to the dung, guys, it's self-sanitizing. Because you've kept the armour on the ground, all this thatch, over time, what you've done, guys, is you've built back that topsoil, but what you've done, not only that, is that's right through there, that is keeping it, the surface of that ground, the dirt, cool. Because you've got that armour on top, that the sun can't dry out the ground, but then you've got 8 inches of grass you've left. So it's very difficult for the sun to penetrate and get rid of the moisture in the ground. So you've made a perfect location for the worms and the microbes to come to the surface and sanitize for you. So the worms take that, the dung beetles take that, they give it to the microbes, they feed back your pasture, help the pasture grow back by the fertilization which that dung has been taken to the ground. And on the other farm where it's been continually grazed, the paddies are sitting there, guys. The worms and the dung beetles and then the microbiology can't do their work because they can't get to that poo because the surface temperature is way too hot. They can't self-sanitize for you. And because I'm giving it long rest, guys, up to 45 days, predominantly anywhere between 28 and 45 days before I bring them back in, you've also got that sun working for you too. It is sanitizing the ground. So when by the time my girls come back in, there's nothing left on the ground. It's self-sanitized. And like I said, they're not eating in the dirt, so they're not getting rid of the parasites. And there's no flies because it's self-sanitized, because all the worms and the dung beetles and the microbes have removed that defecation or paddies from the ground for you and added it in to fertilize to build back this beautiful pasture. But for an area this size, guys, I've normally got 5 animals in here, and they're a bit bigger framed than the 2 Galloways which I'm utilizing at the moment. But you know, this area at the moment for the Galloways takes them 3 to 4 days, so there is more dung on the ground, you know, and potentially the flies have laid and they're on that borderline of hatching. But there's nothing I can do about it. Like I said, I've got my normal girls out on the other farm being serviced by the bull. So it seems to me, because we've had a lot of rain of late, there's not many flies around, but I don't seem to see many flies on the Galloways either, guys. There are certain species of cattle which are less resistant to parasites, and these seems to be, yeah, the flies don't seem to worry these ones, but we have had cooler conditions, so the numbers are down. But I generally like to move them twice a day to get them away from that poo and you know, stop overgrazing. These haven't overgrazed, so I'm still keeping an eye on, I'm still pastoral managing here. Like I said, this fence is going to move today. They're at the level which I would have normally moved them with my girls, so it's taken them 4 days to get in here. But guys, this regenerative farming or managed grazing or rotational grazing definitely works, because on the other farm, I was slashing 3 or 4 times a year because, you know, the grass was growing up that fast and it's all coming to seed head. These girls are doing it for me now. I bring them through, they remove the seed head. By the time they come back through again, the seed heads aren't there. They've been chewed off, you know, to a level. You know, you're going to get some seed heads come, but predominantly it's not like continuously grazing where it just all comes to seed head because they can't keep up with them. You're moving them through, they're keeping it down at a managed height at teenage level, 60%. By the time they come back, it's grown, it's recovered, it hasn't had a chance to seed head. So you're still keeping your plant in a vegetative state, not coming to seed head, not dropping and not dying off and draining energy. So you're saving money on slashing, you're saving money on weed control, because on the other farm there is weeds everywhere. Because it's been overgrazed, Mother Nature is trying to heal herself. There's bare dirt, she'll pop up weeds to cover herself, she'll pop up the weeds that are relevant for that soil type, that are going to grow best, that don't die, because she wants to cover herself. So you're saving money on weeds, there's more pasture, you're not using chemicals to spray the weeds, and you're also saving on fodder, guys. Out there, we've got to buy fodder every year come winter because there's no pasture left. Here, because the moisture is predominantly kept in the ground, you know, we might have to buy a couple of bales, but nowhere near. I reckon it would be less than a quarter of the fodder than we use on the other farm. So we're saving there as well, guys. And parasite control. Parasite control is not cheap, guys. It is definitely not cheap. If you're going back rubs and flies and you've got ticks and you've got worms, you know, there's a couple of $100 a bottle, guys. It's not cheap. So this regenerative farming, rotational grazing or cell grazing, you're saving slashing, you're saving on weed control or poisons, you're saving on fodder, and your savings on parasite controls. To me, guys, it's a no-brainer. Righto, folks, I've just about covered everything. The only thing you got to decide now for yourself is what side of the fence you're going to be on. Is it continually grazed, or is it going to be the rotationally grazed side? Or it may be still a case, guys, that you're a fence sitter and you're in between the two. That's all right, but just be mindful, guys, what's dangling. There's a hot wire about a foot below. So that's why I should have had my steel cap shoes on, guys. The last thing I want is my toes to get a zap from that hot wire. I think I've said enough in relation to continuous grazing versus rotational grazing. What I want to talk about now is a competition we're going to start. It's on our Facebook page, so if you jump across to our Udder Farm Facebook page, or you can have a guess here after this video and just put it in the comments column. What it is, guys, is we want you guys to guess when Udder Farm is going to reach the 500 subscription mark. So guess the month and also give us a date in case people give us the same months. So, your guess is as good as ours, guys. It could be within 2-3 months, it could be 6, it could be 12 months. Depending if we have a video go viral like we did with our bale grazing video, went 11K, we got a couple of hundred subscribers within a 2-week period. But then at the moment, we're getting like 10 subscribers in a couple of months or a month. So, your guess is as good as ours, guys. That's why it's a competition. It's not going to be easy, but at least it'll be fun for all of us. So, and what we're doing, guys, is giving the first person or first place who guesses the closest to when we hit the 500 subscribers is a choice of what colour stubby cooler they want. So, as you can see, the stubby coolers have got the Udder Farm logo on. Also, we're going to send out a trucker's hat. It's also displays the Udder Farm logo, and also a Udder Farm keyring. So this is one I've got my car keys on. It's got the Udder Farm logo on, and it's also, I just put my mobile number and my name on it so people can get hold of me if I end up losing them or dropping them somewhere. So the terms of the competition is we'll give you guys 3 guesses. So by all means, put in 3 guesses. I would probably suggest having a short term, medium and a long term, because we don't know when we're going to hit 500 subscribers. It really depends, like I said, if a video goes viral. So, and I'm going to open it to anywhere in the world. So, we're happy to pay postage. Actually, I'll just get Nicole to cover the postage. I'll just get her to work back, do a bit of overtime, and she can cover it. So, only joking, Dale. Joking. Just settle. Joking. I'm going to get Callum to pay for it. He's an apprentice electrician, and we all know the electricians are probably one of the most highest paid in the building industry. So probably a little bit overpaid. He's always coming home clean, so I don't know actually what he does. So I'll get him to cover it. Mate, I'm joking, mate. Once again, I'm joking. Settle. I'll actually cover it. So I know they work hard, these electricians. It's a job I wouldn't like to do. I've dabbled in it a few times, and it hasn't been pretty, the outcome. So they're worth every cent, guys. So, righto, guys. So either jump on our Facebook page or do it here on YouTube. But the competition close date is when the YouTube channel hits 400 subscribers. So make sure you jump in, because like I said, we're mid 350 odd now. It's closer to 360. So jump in before you miss out and have those guesses. And anywhere in the world, guys, we'll post out to you. Once you give it a guess and we hit 500, we'll get hold of you through either our Facebook page or on the YouTube. So have a look on the comments column when we hit 500 from where you put the comments, and we'll have a look for the winner and let you guys know, and we'll get your addresses and send them out to you. Righty, guys, have fun and good luck, and have a good morning, have a great afternoon and a terrific evening, guys, wherever you're watching this from, and we'll catch you later.